Chapter 5, The Stuffed Pillow. Although Fan Xian was only 4 years old on the outside, he was a mature soul on the inside, and the blood and light and corpses of his first day in this world were firmly imprinted in his mind, so he had always had a great deal of unease in his heart, knowing that his unclear and ambiguous birth would one day bring him trouble. It seemed that today this trouble had finally come. The sneak attack didn't work. Naturally, he couldn't repeat the same trick. On one side, he was pathetically sobbing with the intention of confusing that night person. On the other side, he was rapidly turning his brain, wanting to find a way to escape from life. If he called for help, the other party would surely kill himself in a very short time, and seeing that the other party did not do anything at the moment, he was obviously knocked out by the father that he had called out carelessly. Fan Xian's brain turned surprisingly fast. Once he saw that the sneak attack did not work, relying on his own innate advantage of super young age, looked at the Nightwalker, wailed, "Dad, Dad." Crying on one side of the heart tense and incomparable began to calculate how to escape themselves. "No need to pretend, young Master Fan." The tone of the Nightwalker's speech was indifferent, but it didn't seem to be dangerous. "It seems like you're really smart, knowing how to protect yourself at such a young age, but you should know very well that I'm not Lord Earl." After saying these words, the Nightwalker compared the knife in his hand before leaning towards the 4-year-old Fan Xian. While Fan Xian's face remained innocent and tear-filled, his heart contracted tightly as he sobbed. "Then who are you, Uncle? I was sent by your father to see you, so don't scream, oh." The Nightwalker's eyes were slightly brown and looked a bit ugly, while the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes revealed his age, and the tone of his voice reminded Fan Xian quite directly of those old grandfathers who tricked little girls into seeing goldfish. But Fan Xian didn't show it, still perfectly playing the hint of shock, a few hints of surprise, and a little bit of anger that a 4-year-old should have. "You're not Dad." Then, as if he didn't see the knife held in the other's hand, he wiggled his little butt and climbed onto the big bed, cooing, "Don't even know what Daddy looks like." The Nightwalker smiled grimly and made his way over to the bed. Suddenly, the little boy on the bed twisted his head to look behind Nightwalker. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes and called out, "Mommy." This was a very cheating move of sounding out the east and striking the west. If it was cast by any other person, I'm afraid that it wouldn't fool that Nightwalker. After all, the other party is also a master who independently owns a laboratory in Kyoto. But the one who performed this move was a 4-year-old boy, so the Nightwalker simply believed it, and as soon as he heard Fan Xian call for his mother, an extremely shocked look appeared inside the Nightwalker's eyes, and he violently twisted his head to look back. Behind him was naturally the tightly closed door and the thick night color. Bang! A crunching sound resounded in the bedroom. The Nightwalker lay on the floor with his head covered in blood. Fan Xian, holding a half-broken porcelain pillow in his hand, looked at the guy on the ground with palpitations, weighed the remnants of the pillow in his hand, clenched his teeth, raised his little arm, and ruthlessly smashed it down towards the back of the other guy's head. This is a muffled sound. The force with a great, even if the night person is a generation of masters, suffered this muffled pillow. I'm afraid that a moment and a half will be difficult to wake up. Outside came the big maid's voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, sister, broke a cup. Come back tomorrow to get it." "How can that be? What if you hurt young master's foot?" "I said tomorrow." Hearing the young master, who had always been gentle and sweet and innocent, lose his temper, the maid stopped her mouth and didn't say anything else. Fan Xian walked back to the closet and dragged a winter quilt out of it with great difficulty. Then, with a forceful tear of both fingers, he tore the quilt surface into strips of cloth, twisted it, and tied the unconscious Nightwalker on the ground up firmly and solidly. It was only at this point that he realized that his back was completely wet. A trace of fear surged into his heart, whether in his previous life or in this life. This was the first time he had ever intended to kill someone. Although he didn't know if he had killed the other party or not, he had taken too much of a risk. If the other party was really a martial arts expert, his previous blow would have surely cut short his own life. Probing his hand under the Nightwalker's masked black scarf, he tried, realizing that the other party was still breathing, and for some reason, Fan Xian's mind surged with the idea of killing and exterminating the other party. Then he realized that after he was reborn, his character seemed to have become much tougher, and he had not hesitated even though he had been so ruthless just now. He himself did not notice that this was because in the heart of the child now called Fan Xian, he was already someone who had died once, and his rebirth in this life was extraordinarily precious, so he would not allow anyone to harm his life. It was so simple to realize that life was heavy only after one had been drunk, and only after one had died did one realize that life was heavy. Holding that small knife in his hand, thinking and thinking, Fan Xian still didn't make up his mind to kill this unconscious nightwalker on the ground. Suddenly he thought of someone. A joyful color appeared on his face, quietly pushed open the door of his room, ran to the backyard and burrowed out from the dog hole, and came to the grocery store outside of that on the opposite street corner of the Earl's mansion. Snap, snap, snap. He gently knocked on the door panel of the grocery store, and the sound was so small that it didn't reach far in the quiet late night of Tanyu. But Fan Xian knew that the person inside must be able to hear this knocking, and although the other person had pretended not to recognize him for the past 4 years, when it came down to it, Fan Xian could only think that this person could be trusted. Who? A voice came from the grocery store that was flat to the core, without a hint of emotional fluctuation. Fan Xian thought to himself that this person was really still the same as he was back then outside of Kyoto, speaking and doing everything in a single-minded manner, and after his eyes rolled twice, he said softly, "I'm Fan Xian." As expected of Fan Xian, the wooden door of the grocery store opened silently, and the blind teenager just stood in the doorway like a ghost, startling Fan Xian in turn. Fan Xian looked at the person in front of him who had sent him to Tanyu Harbor, looking at the other person's cheeks that didn't seem to have changed even a bit in the past 4 years, and the piece of black cloth over his eyes, and wondered a bit in his heart, could it be that none of these people would ever grow old?